Candide, or as my autocorrect calls it, Candid, is about a young man who's thrust from comfort into an uncaring and violent world and what he learns there. Voltaire wrote Candide in 1759. It was a satirical response to the philosophical optimism prevalent during his time, particularly the ideas of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who attempted to explain the existence of an evil world created by an all-powerful and supposedly benevolent god. The novella follows its naive protagonist, Candide, through a series of misfortunes and adventures. Candide's experiences repeatedly challenge the notions he was brought up to believe, specifically that we live in the best of all possible worlds. Through a blend of adventure, humor, and biting social commentary, Voltaire critiques various aspects of 18th century society, including religion, philosophy, and politics. The work's enduring popularity stems from its wittiness, its memorability, and the ultimate message that one must cultivate their own garden, meaning when it comes to self-development, practical action is more important than idle philosophical speculation. Candide, for some, epitomizes Voltaire's contribution to Enlightenment thought. It was a roller coaster of a read, and I'd like to tell you why. Hi, I'm Nitwit. Welcome to SHiT. Candide is initially brought up in the castle of Baron Thundertentrunk. He's presumed to be the son of the Baron's sister, and as such he's afforded the luxuries of a nobleman, particularly an education. Candide is taught by Pangloss, a metaphysico-theologo-cosmologician who believes things must necessarily be created for the best end. Pangloss is Voltaire's main vehicle for satirizing the philosophy of Leibniz. He's the embodiment of philosophical optimism. Pangloss shapes Candide's initial perspective on life. He begins the story as a devoted follower of Pangloss's optimistic philosophy, viewing it as absolute truth. This naive acceptance of Pangloss's teaching sets the stage for Candide's journey of disillusionment and eventual rejection of blind optimism. Candide is displaced from the castle when he's caught kissing Miss Cunegonde, the Baron's daughter, and here begins Candide's adventure. Candide travels throughout Europe, Germany, Holland, and Portugal, where Candide is actually present for the destructive earthquake of 1755. Then he makes his way to South America, traveling from Argentina to Paraguay, to El Dorado, to Suriname. During his time traveling throughout Paraguay, El Dorado, and Suriname, Candide is motivated to reunite with Miss Cunegonde, who he's promised to marry. He's given an enormous fortune in El Dorado, but he loses most of it through profligacy, swindling, and his naivety. Once Candide gets back to Europe, he moves from France to England to Italy just to find his love. When he finds her in Turkey, she's no longer the lovely woman he fell in love with. Actually, she's described as being quite ugly, but because Candide has promised to marry her, he follows through on his word. Now we'll go over the cast of characters with a bit more specificity. So Candide is our innocent protagonist. Pangloss is Candide's tutor, who teaches him that all is for the best in the best of all possible worlds, which is the butt of philosophical optimism at the time. Cunegonde is the Baron's daughter and Candide's love interest. Cacambo is Candide's valet as he travels through South America. Martin is a pessimistic philosopher and the counterpoint to Pangloss, who accompanies Candide later on in his journey. The old woman is Cunegonde's servant with one butt cheek. She's also potentially the illegitimate daughter of Pope Urban X. The young Baron is Cunegonde's brother. His relevance to the story is in his repeated refusals to let Candide marry Cunegonde, on the grounds that Candide's not noble enough for her. Jacques the Anabaptist is a merchant who helps Candide in Holland. He's only there for a short section. Jacques falls overboard while attempting to rescue another sailor on Candide and Pangloss's voyage to Lisbon. And there are many other supporting characters. Paquette, who gives Pangloss syphilis, Don Isaacre and the Grand Inquisitor, who trade off days that they own Miss Cunegonde at one point in the story, Senator Pococurante, and then there's the farmer, whose lifestyle of hard work eventually inspires Candide. Candide's publication inspired scandal, though it was positively regarded by many. Its publication process was extremely secretive due to its illicit and irreverent content. Nonetheless, it was a bestseller. It sold between 20 and 30,000 copies in the year it was released, which is a lot considering the literacy rate was around 50% across Europe at the time, a whole lot lower in France. I found out interesting to note. In spite of its popularity, the book was banned by the Grand Council of Geneva and the administrators of Paris for perceived religious blasphemy. Of course, Candide also sparked debate by satirizing the popular Leibnizian philosophy of optimism. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any of the original reviews of Candide from when it was published in 1759, but considering the ban and how well it sold, we can infer that they were pretty colorful, which is such a bummer, guys. We're really missing out here. And now we'll talk about some themes within the book. The novel begins with Candide fully embracing the optimistic philosophy taught by his mentor Pangloss. This philosophy asserts that we live in the best of all possible worlds, that everything happens for a reason, and ultimately leads to good. Pangloss embodies this extreme optimism, maintaining his beliefs even in the face of tremendous suffering. He continues to philosophize rather than take action, often to absurd lengths. As Candide experiences a series of misfortunes and witnesses widespread suffering, his unwavering optimism is gradually challenged. Candide's optimistic worldview erodes as he encounters war, natural disasters, and human cruelty. He begins to doubt Pangloss's teachings, realizing that good intentions don't always lead to positive outcomes. And then there are characters like Martin and the Old Woman, who represent pessimism, and they offer alternative viewpoints on the nature of the world. By the novel's end, Candide abandons the notion that everything happens for the best. He concludes that practical work and self-improvement are more valuable than philosophical speculation. The metaphor of cultivating one's garden represents a middle ground between optimism and pessimism, focusing on personal responsibility and meaningful labor. Ultimately, Candide suggests that while optimism has its place, a realistic approach to life's challenges, combined with productive work, is the key to finding contentment in an imperfect world. Candide presents a scathing critique of war and wealth, using its satire to expose the destructive nature of both. Voltaire portrays war as a senseless and brutal endeavor throughout the novel. He depicts various conflicts, including the 7 Years' War, to showcase the arbitrary nature of warfare. War brings indiscriminate devastation, with armies causing widespread destruction, regardless of their allegiances. In this way, Voltaire satirizes the notion of war as glorious, in one instance contrasting the music of the army bands with the horrific sounds of battle. Moreover, Candide's experience of being forcibly conscripted and mistreated in the army highlights the dehumanizing aspects of warfare. So now let's shift to talking about wealth, and then we'll talk about the intersection. The theme of wealth in Candide is equally critical, exposing its corrupting influence and fleeting nature. Those with wealth and power often exploit and corrupt others, creating a stark divide between social classes. That doesn't sound familiar at all. It doesn't sound familiar for us now. That makes no sense. We can't relate to that. Wow. Candide's rapid gains and losses of wealth underscore the transient nature of material riches. And this is evidenced in the book section where Candide travels to El Dorado, the city of gold. Rather than solving issues, Candide's newfound wealth attracts swindlers and false friends, complicating his journey. Voltaire often intertwines the themes of war and wealth to highlight their interconnected nature. War is a tool of the wealthy. Conflicts are often initiated by the powerful for their own gain, at the expense of the common people. This being so, wealth is often ineffective protection for Candide. Despite his riches, he cannot escape the brutalities of war and social injustice. Idealized love in Candide serves as another vehicle for satire and critique of naive optimism. Throughout the novel, Voltaire uses Candide's pursuit of Cunegonde to illustrate the folly of clinging to unrealistic expectations in the face of harsh realities. At the beginning of the novel, Candide's love for Cunegonde is depicted as a naive, idealized infatuation. He's captivated by her beauty, views her as the epitome of perfection, and their first idealized romantic encounter is described in exaggerated romantic terms, setting up unrealistic expectations. This idealized love becomes Candide's driving force, propelling him through his journey and his misadventures. Candide's pursuit of Cunegonde serves multiple functions, providing a thread connecting the novel's episodic structure, symbolizing Candide's broader adherence to optimistic philosophy, and embodying the absurd lengths to which Candide goes in his pursuit. All these things highlight the folly of idealism. As Candide becomes disillusioned with blind optimism, Cunegonde's beauty fades, challenging Candide's idealized image of her. so ultimately the reality of their reunion falls short of Candide's expectations. But Candide's obligation to marry Miss Cunegonde, despite his loss of attraction, underscores the gap between ideals and reality. Voltaire uses the theme of idealized love in Candide as a microcosm for broader philosophical and social critiques. By following Candide's journey from naive infatuation to disillusioned acceptance, readers are encouraged to question their own idealized notions and confront the complexities of the real world. Recommendation. Do I recommend reading this book? This little bitty book? Yeah, I think I do recommend reading this one. Obviously it was written in the 18th century, so there are plenty of little stereotypes and characterizations that are not so in line with our modern sensibilities that you'll have to ignore. But these stereotypes don't detract significantly from the novel's impact. That is, it's super biting, entertaining, and well worth the little amount of time it'll take to get through. I'd say it'll take you maybe like 2 hours. It's not bad. So, once again, this has been SHiT. I am Nitwit, and I'll see you in a bit. We're gonna do Anna Karenina next.